Good evening. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting for Monday, October 27th, 2025. I'm Steve Robinson, and I will be your chair tonight. We'll begin with the land acknowledgement. On October 27th, 2025, we acknowledge that this sacred land on which Smiths Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all of our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. So I'll call the meeting to order at 5:02 p.m. So I need a motion for the approval of the agenda, moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Brennan, that the October 27th, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting be approved as circulated. All in favor? Okay. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and or conflict of interest in general nature thereof? Seeing none. Need a motion for the approval of minutes. Moved by Councillor McKenna, seconded by Councillor Councillor Miller. Oh boy, that was a great way to start things off. The minutes of September 22nd, 2025, October 6th, 2025, and October 14th, 2025. Committee of the Whole meetings be approved and circulated. All in favor? Perfect. Okay, we are going to hopefully very quickly move into a in-camera session. So I need a motion. Okay, moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Quinn, that Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smiths Falls, as provided in Section 239(2)E of the Municipal Act 2001, as amended, move into a closed meeting at 5:04 p.m. to discuss a litigation matter. All in favor? Okay. Carried. We'll be back as quickly as possible.
back on.
Sorry we took so long. Council gave direction to staff on a litigation matter. So moving along, we've got 3 delegations. First one being with KPMG. It's an audit presentation with Lori Huber. I just want to remind everybody presenting, got 10 minutes to make your presentation, and then question and answers follow after that. So Lori, welcome. Go ahead. Can't hear you. Ooh. Can you hear us? We can't hear you.
Nope, nothing yet, Lori.
Can't hear you.
Wouldn't be so simple as the volume on here.
Shouldn't be.
Don't you love technology?
Lori, can you try to connect or to disconnect and reconnect? And we'll see if we can get the audio working again. Paul, did you turn these up or did you leave them?
I did the volume up.
Because I just don't want any feedback.
Okay.
Let's go Blue Jays.
Please stand by. We're having technical difficulties.
Should we jump ahead with Michael?
Do you want to move ahead? Let's go with Michael. Well, let's try moving to the next one with you, Michael. Michael Cohn, the hospital president and CAO. Welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. It's great to be here again, and to thank you for all the support you've given us and the excellent piece of paved road directly in front of the hospital. It is marvelous. Thanks for that. I really appreciate it. So I wanted to just come and do our annual presentation. If you want to just go to the next slide. So as I've said before, we do have a strategic plan, but for us, it's all about making a difference every day to patients and being practical. And on the next slide, you can see that this year our focus is going to be on improving our nursing, what we call our nursing model of care. Now, you may be thinking, well, nurses are regulated health professionals, they have standards, they do, but like in any large organization, getting everybody going in the same direction at the same time is a constant challenge. And so we're going to be updating our nursing model of care. So they'll be focused on structured standard work for our nurses, so scheduled rounding. So we want to make sure all our patients are seen and have a standard approach. So asking about pain, posturing, is there anything we can give you on a standardized basis? And when we do that, we actually give management and also people like me the ability to go up in the units, talk to patients, and observe the standard work as it's being done right at the coalface, as they say. So we're going to be taking the opportunity to take a more patient-centered approach to nursing in our hospital. We're going to be focusing on improving our capabilities in wound care, and we're also going to be focused on incorporating patient feedback into whiteboards at the head of the bed. So things that are a little bit more patient-centered. That, you know, my name is Michael. I like to be called Mike. Your doctor today is Dr. Panko, et cetera, et cetera. So we've done that in concert with our Patient and Family Advisory Committee, and we're very excited about rolling that forward. On the next slide, you'll see that, or perhaps remember some previous presentations around this time of the year, where I'd be telling you that we're in the midst of an early flu season, and I'm very pleased to say that so far the flu season is a little bit delayed compared to previous years, which is great because our hospital is pretty much full or over capacity every day. A big part of that is that we still have a large number of people waiting at our hospital to go into placement, either to long-term care or to assisted living. And we're working closely with our partners to try and overcome that. On the next slide. You'll see, particularly if you're in the Smith Falls Emergency Department, even though we have grand plans for expansion, which I'll talk about later in our hospital system that we run, we don't just let things stay the way they are. So in our Smith Falls site, we've done a major project to update our resuscitation area in emergency department. So this is people who need resuscitation, obviously. Brand new environment as well as state-of-the-art airflow, negative air pressure, exactly what you need to deal with infections and to resuscitate people. And then, of course, if you visit our Perth site, you'll see on our third floor, we're updating our nursing stations. And we are also very, very pleased to announce that it's actually, for about last week and a half, we've been running MRI services now for 16 hours. We were successful in securing additional operating funds in this fiscal year to expand that. And thankfully, it took some time, almost 6 months, but we were able to find techs actually to come and staff. And as of 2 Fridays ago, we actually started running 16 hours a day, which would really help with our wait times here in the region for MRI services. Next slide. Just a couple other quick updates in terms of our financial situation. As I've reported, we've been in a sort of a historically precarious situation, but I'm very pleased to report that in the fiscal year that ended in 24-25, last fiscal, we actually essentially balance our books. We were successful in securing an additional $17 million, mostly in one-time revenue to balance. And we're working very closely with the ministry to make sure that those revenues are incorporated into our base going forward so we can continue to be balanced, which is critical. Any year that we can't balance for a hospital like this, which has not been funded properly for a very long time, it leads to issues with our working capital and our working capital deficit, which inhibits our ability to purchase capital and keep our hospital current. So very pleased in the results that we secured last year, and we aim to keep that going as we go forward. Next slide. So one of the big things, and part of our strategic plan, is that even though we may do renovations year to year, like the resuscitation room here in Smith Falls site, we are looking at the bigger plan for hospital expansion. So there are 3 phases of expansion. And the reason I'm going through it is because there will be a publicly facing part of this next phase, which is called Master Plan, Master Program, which I'll talk about in a second. But there's 3 phases: early planning, detailed planning, and then construction, and the last one is fairly obvious. So in the first page on the next slide, we've already completed actually the first step, which is called pre-cap, which gives the ministry sort of a sense of what you're contemplating. There are, I should say at this stage, that there are many, 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 many phases to the hospital redevelopment process, and there's 2 purposes for that. One is to make sure that the public funds that they ultimately will invest in a new renovated campus, or in this case a new campus, will be appropriate for the community needs, but also to slow you down because they can't have 150 hospitals all trying to rebuild at the same time. So we've done our pre-cap. We submitted that. That was actually one of the first things I worked on when I started as a CEO here at the Perth and Smith Falls Hospital. And we're going to be moving on to the next stage, which is Master Plan, Master Program. And that begins to crystallize that very high-level plan into a more concrete view of what it is that's actually required. So you can start to see what kinds of services, what kind of facility would you have, what are the types of potential new services. And we start to get into things like, you know, in the case of our redevelopment plan, we're probably going to be doing a greenfield, a redo of our Perth campus. And there's also potential for other renovations to happen right here in the Smith Falls. We are committed to a 2-site model. So we are, as we go forward in our planning, we will plan to have 2 sites, one here in Smith Falls, one here in Perth. And a big part of the master plan is we'll have some opportunities to decide, okay, is there any opportunity to balance services, enhance services, do renovations here in Smith Falls, and obviously build a greenfield in the Perth area. Okay, so the next phase of planning will commence likely in Q1, which is April of 2026. And what that means for practical, because I know someone's going to probably ask me, so when's first patient, when's the shovel in the ground, when's first patient? It's likely, best case scenario, 6 years, average from where we are today, 7 to 9 years. Okay, which is why it's one of the first things I started when I got here, because I know how long it takes to actually get from idea to first patient. Okay, next slide. In terms of our cap lane, again, we couldn't be more grateful for the support of our municipalities to help us with our large-scale capital projects. And I'm very pleased that just under a year ago, we went live with our electronic medical record project, which was, I'm sure if you were on site, it was very stressful. You would have seen a lot of people running around. Having been through it 3 times at different hospitals, even though it was chaotic at times, it was probably the best go live I've been part of. So I'm very proud of the nurses, the doctors, the clinical support staff, and all the team at PSFDH, because it was a basically transformative change. It changed the way that our clinicians do business. And we're now in the point where we're starting to look at how do we enhance it, improve it, and make it better for the future, which is awesome. And on the next slide, you can see, I think I've got a couple of pictures. So it's hard to see in the small monitor here, but this is part of what some of the funds that you've helped support have purchased in terms of new technology, new devices, things that help make patient care safer, which is awesome. Our work's not done. We're working on our back office project, which is coming up. And the one in the middle, I like to point out, some people may know one of our local doctors, Dr. Drummond, who's, I think, coming up on 40 years of practice, busily working away in one of our emergency departments in a fully electronic medical record. So it just shows you that it's something that everyone can learn, especially when patient safety is the goal. Okay, on the next slide. So again, I couldn't thank you enough. And what we're asking you, obviously, is for the continued support as we wind down the EMR project and look towards the future to capital redevelopment, as well as refresh of our clinical capital equipment. And we ask that you continue with the generous support of your local hospital as you go into your budget considerations in following years. With that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to take any questions that council may have.
Thanks, Michael. Any questions, comments? Councilor McKenna?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks very much, Michael. Please, I'm sure on behalf of all of us, thank your employees, our employees at both sites for the hard, very difficult work that they do every day. It is appreciated very much. Thank you.
I appreciate those comments very much.
Councilor Quinn?
Just on that, I was in the hospital earlier this year, and they looked after me wonderfully. They really did, I have to say. They were excellent. I did question, though, why we have to have security in there all the time. And I know there's reasons, and I don't need to know the answer. But anyways, the security person that was there, he was wonderful also, because I was freezing cold, and he kept getting me warm blankets. So I was treated very well. So
I'm very delighted to hear that.
People complained, not quite.
I'm delighted to hear that. And I just will very briefly address the security issue. And I guess to your point, it would be wonderful if we didn't need it. But I think 24/7 security is something that's actually quite standard, particularly when you're running 2 acute care emergency departments. Not just for people with malcontent, but there's also people that sometimes they're not having their best day and they need additional support. And also the staff need that support and security when they're doing their job. So it's actually one of the things that I insisted upon is we didn't actually have 24/7 when I started. And we're going through our second year now where that's been implemented to assure staff and patients a safe environment that they deserve.
Excellent, excellent.
Mayor Panko?
Michael, thank you for the presentation. The second time I've seen it now, maybe the third, but
I should ask you the questions then.
Well, you have the answers though. Just thinking about the ongoing support of the town and of course in our municipal partners. How valuable and how much needed is that going forward from especially from a capital equipment standpoint? Again, recognizing that the province doesn't send enough funds for operating money, but let alone capital.
Yep.
And we have a foundation which is doing great work, but there's obviously still a gap.
Yeah, there's a huge. So thank you for the question, Mr. Mayor. There's a huge gap, and unfortunately, at our hospital, those needs are unfortunately historic. I've only been here. I'm coming up on my fourth year anniversary just in next week, actually, and so I can't speak. I wasn't here when these issues developed, but I think for whatever reason, the hospital fell behind on capital replacement. So the needs of the hospital and the support of the municipalities to help us partially fund, in some cases entirely fund some of our big ticket items. It could never been, it can't be understated, and it's so appreciated. Our big electronic project, which is now getting us to the point where we can actually recruit new nurses, and we're not embarrassed to say all that stuff you learned in university or college, forget it, because you got to go back to paper and see people actually walk out the door. It's invaluable. And, going forward, to be able to support things like our long-term redevelopment or even our yearly capital, to have the municipalities participate is crucial. Because unfortunately, as strong as our foundation is, it's our only other major source of capital for example, clinical equipment, and they can't cover all the needs that we have, unfortunately. So ongoing, and that's part of the reason I come here, is to keep as much of that support going as humanly possible, recognizing that I'm sure every municipality has other needs and other people knocking at their door. But I can't tell you for the staff, and that's why I appreciate the comments about the staff, because that's where the rubber hits the road. To give them the tools that they need to provide excellent care has never been stronger, and that's why your support is so very much appreciated.
Well, thank you. And I guess when this first came forward in 2018, I believe it was, I looked at it as about $20 a head in town. So I think it's a very good use of our tax dollars.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna turn back to Lori Hoover. Hopefully we can hear you. No.
Come back next week.
11, 13, 15, 17.
Library?
I don't know if you were robotic.
Maybe we'll have to defer this to another night.
Yeah, that'd be good.
We need you through tonight.
I'm
Could-
not exactly
Could
sure
we,
what-
could we put it,
Oh, those just create feedback, Paul.
17.
Those will just create feedback.
Okay.
can we put her on a phone? She can at least speak to us.
There's no, Sean's saying there's no audio coming from their end.
Oh, okay. For Mike.
It's urgent. No, still not coming through.
Do we have her number? Do you have her?
Do I have her number?
I have her number. Can I give her phone? How did we do this?
I could put a presentation up.
Well, I meant how we online hear this. I guess put it near there.
You put it in one of the speakers.
Go to the library. Go to the library.
Do you want to move ahead to the library for now, or just wait
As long
and
as
see?
they can work in the background.
Hi, Laurie. I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but we're wondering if we can put on. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Okay, let's put you on speakerphone. We'll put you up to a microphone here. Okay, say something again, please, Laurie.
Can you hear me okay?
Is it coming through online?
I can hear it, but
I'm gonna put Chris's mic, or turn your mic towards it.
Oh.
Then
do these work? Yeah, they're on.
It's interesting, Paul, because it says that my tests are working just fine. I
Yeah,
don't know.
on our side, it says it's working fine as well. Sorry about this, Laurie.
Okay.
But
That's okay. Hey, if we can make it work, I'm good with whatever.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, all right. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm pleased to be here tonight. Unfortunately, not in the means that I'd hoped, but certainly here to share with you the highlights of our audit for the year ended December 31, 2024. As part of tonight's package, there's a very fulsome report. I won't go through each and every page, certainly in a report, but certainly wanted to share a few remarks in terms of the completion of our audit. So starting on page number 6 of our report, we are essentially complete with respect to our audit. recognizing tonight is the committee. I believe the plan is to have the financial statements go forward to council next week. So our audit window will continue to stay open until council does accept and approve the financial statements. So if there is anything in this intervening period, we'll certainly have the conversations with the team to make sure we're aware of anything that could have any implications on the 2024 financial statement. So page number 6 of our report shares with you some of the highlights in the financial statements themselves. So what we see on page number 6 is the statement of financial position. In each of these key items in the financial statements in our report, I've tried to give you some of the financial highlights year over year in terms of some of the more significant variances. I won't touch on the detail, but certainly you can see from a high-level overview in terms of the balance sheet at the end of the year being December 31. If you take a look at the middle of the page, that's where it will highlight the corporation's net debt at the end of the year. So net debt is a combination of the financial assets minus the financial liabilities. I would dare say actually very similar to where you landed at the end of 2023. There are certainly some key items in terms of the movements in the balance sheet accounts year over year, but again, you'll see those on the right-hand side. I would say that fiscal 2024 certainly was a highlight in terms of the capital activity. That shows at the bottom of the statement of financial position as part of your non-financial assets, which is your tangible capital assets. You can see net book value has increased by about 7 million year over year, and you can see some of the more significant additions down there on the right-hand side of the page. So when you take your net debt and add your non-financial assets, that takes you to what we call accumulated surplus, and so we will see the components of that accumulated surplus later on in our report, which would include the reserve and reserve funds that I know council is very much interested in. The next slide just shares with you at a high level in terms of the investments that have been made over the course of time at net book value in terms of your tangible capital assets, but really at a high level, the combination of your construction in progress, your buildings, and your linear assets, which would be your roads, account for more than 90% of that investment over the course of time. You will see on the next slide on page number 8 where the highlights are for reserve and reserve funds. So I've given you a 5-year trend in terms of where the reserve and reserve funds have come over the course of that tenure. You can see that the reserve and reserve funds are starting to come down a little bit. Interestingly enough, when you look on the next slide, which is page number 9, one of the KPIs that the province tends to look at when they look at reserve and reserve funds, they take a look at the percentage of your operating expenses. So you can see at the bottom of the page, the province would suggest anything greater than 20% would be green or good. So you can certainly see you're well within range. One of the questions I often get when I do present to council is to say, what should those numbers be? It's interesting to say that you can't really look at reserve and reserve funds in isolation. As we all know, as we just heard from the previous presentation, lots of capital commitments, certainly forthcoming as the team undertakes the work required for asset management plans and so on. So really it needs to be, married up with some of the more longer term strategic priorities that are on the minds of council. One of the other KPIs that the province looks at is on page 10 of our report. So on your balance sheet, you will see something called tax arrears or taxes receivable. So those are taxes that are owed but not yet paid or earned. One of the KPIs the province looks at will take your tax arrears as a percentage of your current levy. So I've given you a 5-year look back over the course of time in terms of that particular KPI. In this instance, the province would say anything less than 10% would be good. You can see here for 2024, you have reached above that milestone, certainly from a provincial perspective. However, certainly in conversation with the team, it appears as though the supplementaries were certainly more significant than planned at the end of the year. And so again, not in and of itself, but certainly more broadly, I would say we are starting to see a bit more of a collection risk. Granted, you are a municipality, you can use tax sales and other things, but certainly mindful of the economic environment to try to convert these receivables into cash. The next slide on page number 11 highlights your reasons, which is total revenue in your taxes. If you break down to the bottom of the page, you can see the in-year reported surplus for 2024 was just over 6.8 million, which is an increase from the previous year, however, a decrease from budget. You will see, generally speaking, on the right-hand side, some of the more significant variances as well in terms of your total revenue and your total expenses. You will also see, generally speaking, in municipal financial statements, I get asked this question quite a lot, in terms of what the surplus is used for. So this is part of the means to make investments in capital, to be self-funded. This is also your means to make repayments on long-term debt because, as we know, those pieces don't actually show up on the statement of operations. I will say on the expense side of the house, I've made the notation here on page number 11, but we'll see it on the next page. There has been a significant increase in overall payroll year over year of about $2 million. As you look on page number 12, when we break up the operating expenses, not by department, but by object, you will see salaries, wages, and benefits this year about 46% of the pie. Generally speaking, that would be on the higher end of the range. However, for municipalities like yourself that have your own police, this is certainly well within range with some of your peer organizations. Moving into the audit side, past the numbers, in terms of what was new and different this year to bring to your attention, unlike 2023, the standards were certainly far less encompassing. So there was a new revenue recognition standard that we worked through with the team, and really the highlight to share with you here tonight is that the implications were certainly not significant. Although if you've had the chance to read through our report in detail, you will see that we've made an observation in that regard. We continue to do what we call a risk-based audit, standing back, looking at the financial statements as a whole, and certainly adopting an audit plan and audit program to mitigate those risks. Certainly there's nothing unique with respect to your organization and your financial statements. Included in each and every audit, you would have heard me make this same presentation. Last year, we are required to consider a presumed risk of fraud that is mandated to us by the profession, specifically related to management's ability to potentially override controls. So you'll see some background there on page number 15 of our report, but really in terms of findings to share with you here tonight, there are none. Moving our way along through, in terms of the quality of the books and records, so stop briefly on page number 19. Each and every audit cycle requires us to reassess group materiality. As we know, we don't look at all of the financial activities that accommodate into the financial statement. So we set a level of materiality, which is meant to say what would change a user's decision on the financial statement. So for fiscal 2024, that amount was $800,000. Pleased to say nothing we identified through the course of the audit remains uncorrected, so not included in the draft financial statement. But I will say on the following slide, you will see a number of journal entries on page number 20 that essentially were identified through the course of our audit work that have been included in the financial statements. And certainly in terms of a commentary, you will see one of the new observations that we've made as part of our control observation, specifically around internal controls over financial reporting, certainly identified significant items this year related to cutoff, but pleased to say all of those have been included in the draft financial statements circulated. So moving into the following subsequent slides, a little bit more background on internal controls. So we certainly zone in on those internal controls specifically related to financial reporting. We have not made the determination this year that we believe there's a significant deficiency. However, you will see on page 22 of our report, we have made 3 new observations relative to internal controls, specifically around cutoff, as I mentioned, bank reconciliations, along with building permit tracking or record keeping. And this was the one that I alluded to earlier, specifically related to the new revenue recognition standard to make sure that revenue is recorded as earned, not necessarily received or on a cash basis. Following those new observations, I have also given you updates on items that we've mentioned in previous reports. So you can see there are about 5 other observations that have been identified in previous years that continue to remain in progress. So moving along in terms of our independence, we've not provided any non-audit services that might be thought to encroach on our independence. So certainly confident in our ability to reaffirm our independence, which really lends itself into our ability to be able to ultimately opine on the financial statements. And the final piece to share with you here this evening is our draft auditor's report, which starts on page number 29 of our report. As you see, it is a clean draft audit opinion where we believe the financial statements do present fairly in all material respects, and this is certainly after the material items that we identified through the course of our audit work have been appropriately included in the financial statements. The body and content of the report that you see is certainly standard language for an audit report in Canada. The balance of the items in our report are really meant to be more informational items. So perhaps with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn things back to you and welcome any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you, Lord. Any questions or comments? Councillor Miller?
Thank you. Thanks for your report and for working with us on our technology issue here. Appreciate your time. I think this question that I have may be more for staff. But one of the things that we have seen before and we're seeing again today is the overtime and vacation accruals for staff. And we're really busy and we have a huge strategic plan and a lot of priorities, and I know we're adding capacity. I just wonder how we continue to address that to make this a place where we can retain good staff and not worry about them burning out and not putting ourselves in a position of liability.
CEO Morris.
Through the chair, thank you for the question. It's a good one. And I think it's a symptom of some growth, certainly in the organization. But we haven't quite reached in some areas the tipping point where it justifies another staff member. So in some cases it makes more financial sense to pay out or earn time that isn't used at year end. So over the last couple of years, we've been doing more of that, and we find it's still financially advantageous to pay out a little bit of overtime that can't be taken as compared to necessarily hiring more staff in those areas. So while I appreciate the audit picked up on that, I would say the trend is that it's decreasing.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? No, seeing none. Thank you very much for your report. And
I apologize for technology. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, thanks for making it happen.
No problem. Have a good rest of your night.
Yeah,
Bye for now.
you. All right, so let's move on to 7.3, which is the recap of the first 4 months in the Smiths Falls Public Library's renovated building with Nan Foster. Welcome.
Have your presentation there. Let me see that.
So yeah, I'm going to recap our first 4 months. Well, actually, we had 2 days in May, and they're not really captured in this, but they were busy too. So you'll notice the picture. That's, very much the added on space you'll see there at the windows and everything. And we've definitely made a lot of use of it in various children's programs. That's from the K-pop Demon Hunters party, which was super popular, and apparently everyone thinks it's really interesting but me. So, we're serving the community that way. Next slide, please. So we called the summer kind of experimental. It was busy. We didn't have nearly the planning time we normally have. I figured, depending on the staff member, we had about 6 to 8 weeks where people weren't really doing their jobs, just with like moving and organizing and all that. So the summer got kind of thrown together, but I think despite that, it went pretty well, and it was quite busy. A lot of our children's programs were at capacity. We also had a noticeable increase in people using the library as a third space, so I'm not sure how familiar you are with that concept, but basically, people have their home, people have their work, and then there's, third places, and that's, what a library can be. So we had a lot more people just hanging out in the library as in the temporary location. There just wasn't room for that, so we noticed a lot less people just kind of there. It was more transactional, I guess, in the temporary library. And we were happy, being back in our home. We had a lot more people who were, using the library as a place to be for a fair amount of time instead of just going in and out. We had a high number of visits of people that were unaccompanied by children to look at the renovated children's department, which, isn't typical, but it was good. People were quite impressed with it. Lots of numerous comments about the library, which, of course, we kind of expected. But a surprising number were complimenting how much better the library smelled. So that was interesting. And I guess, people are happy. That's good, but we weren't quite expecting that. We noticed a lot with the lift, a lot more strollers and wagons made it upstairs. And, there'd be times where we wouldn't have a program and, there'd be like 5 strollers up there. So that was nice. And, it creates a lot less trouble. We used to have trouble kind of in the basement with people just kind of leaving strollers and getting in the way. So up there, we have a little more room for them. So since we've reopened, we have 51 more active card holders, which, you know, isn't bad. The next slide, please. So in-person visits between 2024 and 2025. So it's up in all months. And I think June's the most interesting because June is, you know, one of our quieter months traditionally. And because everyone was so curious to see it, it was, you know, quite a lot higher, but it was also quite high through the summer, which are more traditionally busy months. And then in September, you know, things slowed down again. The number wasn't quite as good, but still quite a bit more. The next slide, please. And then for the physical collection, again, when I look at that, when I looked at this initially, I was like, oh, well, it doesn't seem like it's that much more, but percentage-wise, it's actually a pretty good increase for physical circulation too. It's just not quite as dramatic as with people visiting in person, but we're still, you know, really happy with the increase. We've definitely had, you know, more people borrowing more. Again, bigger collection, that helps because we were dealing in the temporary location when we got there. We were at about 10% of our normal collection. It kind of got bigger as we were there, but still, maybe we were at 15% of a normal collection when we left. So. Yeah, so having more books does definitely help. Having more people through the door helps circulation as well. And then the next slide. And then recently we did a children's summer programming survey so that we were really happy with the results of that. People were very satisfied. Average score is 4.5 out of 5. People really liked the robotics and eco-literacy programs. We did have one respondent said there's a program they didn't enjoy, and that was a movie. So I'm like, that's easier to take. It's not like we put a lot of effort into that. So most respondents reported preferring Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday afternoon programs, and that aligned very well with what we offered. And most respondents found using our booking system to be quite straightforward. So this year we've been using a different booking system that, you know, automatically reminds people, hey, you're signed up for this. And I mean, it hasn't completely prevented no-shows, but it's improved a lot because we used to have a problem with, you know, a program would be full and like half the people wouldn't come. Now, you know, if the program had 12 people, we usually get at least 10 of them showing up. So, and sometimes all of them. So it was really helpful, and I had like a waiting list. So sometimes we were able to fill spots, you know, a couple hours before the program. So that was really helpful as well. And then the last slide. And just, yeah, if anyone has any questions, I love how much these kids are concentrating. And that's, again, the new space. You can see chairs, the adjustable table that moves.
Thanks, Amanda. Any questions, comments? Councilor McGuire.
Thanks, I appreciate the update. I'm wondering, how did the capital campaign go?
So we ended up raising, I think we're at about 46,000.
Through the chair. How does the data compare to before the library renovation started? Is this something where we're rebounding to normal levels, or
yeah, I'd say we're kind of rebounding to normal in terms of, you know, circulation and people coming through the door. But in terms of programming, it's definitely a lot better than it was before. So programming is definitely, I mean, before I was there, but it's definitely at above since at least COVID. I'd have to see how far to go back to see how far programming is, but it's definitely the best it's been in more than 5 years, I'd say.
Thank you.
Councilor Miller.
So I have the pleasure of representing us on the library board. So I just wanted to take a minute and thank Amanda for her patience and perseverance through this renovation. It was a big job. And it didn't matter what day you went in, they were either packing something or cleaning something during this whole move. And so Amanda, just on behalf of council to you and your staff, thank you so much for the great work you do. It looks amazing in there. Thank you.
I don't see any other questions, so thank you very much for your presentation. All right, moving along. I believe we have one director's report.
That is correct, Mr. Chair. One report, but 3 items. And I promise to be quick. I understand there's a baseball game later. Just a quick clarification. We added a special council meeting this evening, and the reason for that is the item priority issue number 10.5 is time sensitive. So the draft approval on the Maple Ridge subdivision expires on November 2nd. Council doesn't meet until November 3rd. There is a mechanism to bridge that gap, but we don't entirely trust that mechanism, so we'd like to issue or deal with that issue tonight in the spirit of certainty. The other second item is just clarification. Back on September 22nd, I was providing a verbal update about the demolition and restoration activities at 25 Old Mill Road, the former water treatment plant. At that time, I was asked a question about the type of railing that was going to go around the capped foundation. And at the time, the information I had was that it would be a railing, a black railing. As it turns out, we had to change that and turn it into a fence, a chain link fence. And Director Clark is working on potentially being a black vinyl covered chain link fence. We're working on it.
Working on it.
Okay. Anyway, it'll be a chain link fence. And the reason for that is it meets building code requirements, and our insurer would only cover the cost of a security system that meets building code requirements. So that was incorrect information. It will be a chain link fence, and we're trying to make it look as attractive as a chain link fence can look. So that's being done in the month of November?
Short order, yeah.
Short order, okay. And then lastly, we've been following the ALTO, the high-speed rail project, quite closely. And as council may recall, the federal government put it on the second top 5 list of nation-building projects, so that's very encouraging. We've asked their stakeholder relations folks to come and tell us about the project, the status of the project. It'll be an opportunity to ask questions, raise the profile in our community and our region, quite frankly. So they will be here on December 8th to have that discussion. So big, exciting project, and we'll be keen to hear what they have to say as an update. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Okay, we don't have any committee of the whole consent reports, so we'll move right into priority issues. Item 10.1, audit and financial statements with Director Dauber.
So I, through the chair, I believe that this was put in as a place marker to get a resolution to bring the financial statements back to council next Monday night in order to pass them and make them publicly available on the website.
Okay. Works for me. Works. Oh, you got a question?
Yeah, I just, they had that one recommendation in their presentation about management oversight or controls reporting. Is that something that's been taken care of already, or is that something policy procedure needs to change?
So I want to make sure that I've got the, through the chair, I want to make sure that I have the right recommendation.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
While Director Dauber's looking for that, just to clarify, is this one of the deficiencies that was noted in the audit?
It was just a significant risk in the presentation on slide 14.
At 14, okay.
So I think if memory serves, that's a significant risk in any organization that they audit.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the fine print says they didn't identify anything here. That's good news. Unfortunately, it was a little bit smaller print than the title, which is it could be an exposure for any organization. Paul, perhaps you can correct me on that, but I think they concluded it is not a risk for the town of Smiths Falls.
Through the chair, that would be correct. This was the slide that was in last year's presentation as well, and it is a slide on all audit, municipal audits, identifying that in any organization, there is the chance of management overrides of control, which is a significant risk rating. And then if you go to the next slide, I believe is where it says that they found that there is no critical matter with that management. So they're acknowledging that it's a significant event should it happen, but through their audit, they found that there are no significant overrides or security issues.
So it's nothing related to our software or our process or anything like that?
No, there was one recommendation further on that just talked about the fact that as of the time the audit took place, there was still some IT security issues, which have been resolved since then. And it does note that on the development of that those issues have been addressed.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Director Dauber. All right. 10.2, Smiths Falls Public Library Memorandum of Understanding with Director Clark.
Good evening. I'm here before you tonight with the long-awaited MOU, Memorandum of Understanding between the Smiths Falls Public Library Board and the town of Smiths Falls. I won't belabor the point because I know we're all ready to go watch a ball game. But just a couple of quick acknowledgements before I get to the meat of the reason that I'm here. First and foremost is to my colleague Nadine Bennett. She's 50% of the town of Smiths Falls HR department, and she was an excellent help throughout this process. Carrie was helpful too as well, so thanks for that, Carrie. The other thanks I'd like to give is to the library board. It's a group of volunteers that give selflessly of their time to make sure that we have a strong public library here in Smiths Falls. And as CEO of the library, Amanda just shared, it is a critical third space for our community, and I'm really grateful we have it, and I think we're very lucky as a community. And so the Amandas, the CEO, Amanda Foster, and Amanda Guerin, the chair of the board, were also very helpful throughout this process. You may recognize that it has taken a while for me to get here. I know, Councillor Miller, you've asked a very good question a number of times about when it was coming forward. I'm finally here. I'd like to be excited about that. That isn't a recognition of the fact that it was a contentious deliberation or a contentious conversation. We just, I think, wanted to take the time that it took and make sure that we had the best possible product for both organizations coming forward. Just a quick note too, the Amanda Foster, one of the half of the Amanda's team, was really very strong advocate for the autonomy of the public library. Legislatively, they are a separate organization, town adjacent, but separate in terms of its entity. And I think that was really helpful to get that really well understood and embedded within the MOU, and you should be able to see that come through. So to the point of why I'm standing here, I'm seeking your authorization to pass a bylaw to execute the Memorandum of Understanding, which has gone to the Public Library Board, and they have agreed to it as presented, between the town of Smiths Falls and the Smiths Falls Public Library Board for the period of January 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2029. So that is backdated. I just realized that it was backdated because it's not January 2025, so I can fix that.
Councillor McGuire. Geez, I'm having a hard time today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Clark. It's great to see this. I'm really excited to see that the library is going to be following our procurement policies and our financial reporting policies. The HR section is really great because I think that takes a lot of liability off the municipality and the library board and gets it ironed out really well. I've got a question on insurance liability because the town is going to be providing insurance to the library, and then the library is providing its own winter snow removal and IT services. Those two to me have a big insurance risk, and I'm wondering how will we know that the library standards are at or above the town standards so we're not at risk for a claim?
I mean, that's a great question. I think part of it is twofold. This is a sort of consolidation of activity that's already happening. So we have already, that would be embedded in a process that's already occurred or is ongoing. This is just, it's simply written down at this point. So I think, I also would acknowledge that the Public Library Board has their own autonomy, as I've stated, and they have a responsibility to ensure that risk is communicated effectively. So through conversations with the board, I think that would be where we'd have to go with that. So understanding that we could do an audit, I think that's what you're getting at, of their policies and procedures. The expectation is that they uphold their end of the bargain and we uphold our end of the bargain.
Through the chair. So is that something that's already formalized in here that will be happening, or is that something that would need to be happening informally outside of the MOU?
So through the chair, it's not necessarily formalized in terms, there is some communication that's required. I have to meet with the board or the director of community services, who happens to be me at this point in time. It has to meet with the board twice a year at a minimum, and has to meet with the CEO at a minimum of twice a year as well. That could be part of those communications. There is no obligation for them to open their policy books to us at this point. In terms of ensuring and enshrining that autonomy, I think that may be something that they would want to discuss outside of the bounds of the current agreement that we have before us. I think in addition to that, I would say that we have an expectation that is broadly built in this process, and I'm just going to look for it here. They are required to, where is this at? Provided that they align with the applicable town bylaws, policies, and processes, services provided by the town to the board will be delivered in accordance with the town's policies and directives. So that's sort of our fail-safe of making sure that they are following what our expectations are. One of the expectations that we would have is that they follow and provide risk management for their own selves, as we do with other organizations.
Okay. CEO Morse.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps to augment what Director Clark has provided, the other, I guess, mechanism to make sure that risk is being managed is that our insurer does periodic inspections, and we invite them to come and inspect a sidewalk program. For instance, we are open about that, and we want them to tell us what we can do to be better at managing risk. So I don't know if the library's specifically been part of one of those audits, but we could make sure at some point that it is, and that we're checking across the organization. They're primarily spot audits. They don't look at everything, but that would be one mechanism to ensure that procedures and policies are in line with the coverages that we provide. And if they're not, our insurer provides direction on how to correct it.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments? Councilor McKenna?
Thank you. I'm supportive of the signing of this. And this question is either for the CEO or for yourself. It's just, how binding is this? Is it a legal contract, or is it when you have one party? It's an MOU, but it didn't go through our lawyer, but it's a foundational legal document. It sets the framework. So I just wondered how binding it is, or.
And if I can, so our lawyer did review it and approved it essentially.
Just didn't show up under consultations.
Oh,
sorry. So that's why I asked.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good call. Yes, there you go. So I'll add that to the report when I resubmit.
Councilor McKenna or McGuire? Oh, Mal?
Yeah, I would just add by saying that it is an operating agreement, not a governance agreement, of course. Library has their own board and act and so on. So I think it's meant to fundamentally just define the operating arrangement and who does what.
Yeah, that's great.
So it provides guidance.
Thank you.
You got another question?
Yeah, too. I really like how the relationship between the town and the library board's defined and formalized in here. One thing, though, I'd like to see would be an annual report from the board that comes to council and says, this was our capital operating budget. These are our performance metrics this year. This is what we're asking for the next year. I think in the fall, that'd be a great time to have that conversation. Is that something that you think the board would be open to, or needs to be formalized in this? Or?
If I may, yes. In fact, in anticipation of you asking this question this evening, I reached out to the board chair and to the CEO, and they both agreed that it would be an acceptable thing to include in the MOU.
So, and we've got one more. Yeah. With the capital requests, what I realized from going through this process in the last round, the town had been putting money away for several years in reserves to fund the renovation before it happened. But the capital campaign didn't happen until after everything was kind of underway. So I'm wondering, is it okay, or is it would it be a better practice that when the board comes to council and says, this is our capital 2, 3, 5-year plan, and this is the money we need, that we also ask for a fundraising plan that comes with that? Because I think the library is in a unique position where they can collect revenues through fundraising, which a lot of the other stuff we fund doesn't have access to that. Is that something that is naturally part of a capital plan, or is that something we'd have to specify or ask for to get to?
So if I may, I think one of the when we're trying to ensure and trying again that they are following our processes, one of the things that we do when we come to a capital with capital deliberations is explain how we want to pay for things, or what the Director Dauber has some what they call budget enhancement sheets that we're going to be using to move forward and be more explicit about what the ask is, what the potential funding could be for it, and so on. So I think it would be not unreasonable. It would actually be the expectation that those are completed as well, because they're following our processes. And so as my department would do, we would ask for them. I think just a comment about some of the funding that's available to the public library. Yes, they do have funding that is available. However, they are often in competition based on the size of our community with us as a municipality. We have to apply on their behalf, so that can be problematic. General fundraising from the community, that's a different reality, but I know that the CEO and I have had some collaboration, some conversations around, okay, so who's going to apply for this one? Who has the best shot? And so on. And we want to continue those conversations so that we can make sure we weigh those effectively. But we are in competition for the same pot of money in a number of different, I wouldn't say significant amounts of money, but helpful pots of money.
One more.
So just to make sure I'm understanding it, part of that private fundraising will be part of future capital asks through the budget process based on our current policies, procedures.
Through the chair, if that is what they want to participate in and they want to undertake private fundraising, that would be up to the library board to decide if they wanted to do that for sure. That would be up to them. I would suggest that based on your question, if they're going to be anticipating using a capital campaign in a private fundraising way, they would need to share that with us when we're bringing forward the request.
Yes. Councillor Miller had it.
Well, I was just going to say I don't think this belongs in the MOU. This is a relationship conversation. The library is very similar to the police department, and we don't ask the police to fundraise, and we don't ask other departments. Yes, the library is unique in that they have this community relationship, which is very special. They've got a group that does some fundraising for them. The $46,000 was an incredible campaign, helped pay for most of the furniture, but I'm not really prepared tonight to get into, how much money of their budget do they have to raise. I just don't think that's something I'm very comfortable with.
Well, just going back when it came to this redevelopment, I was under the impression that there had been a fair amount of fundraising that occurred over several years leading up to the final, I guess, to the redevelopment. So the community had, so maybe it's something we can look at in the future or have a report based on. I thought the cost of the renovation was somewhere 1.2, 1.3, and almost half of that money came from the community at some point in time. So maybe we can clarify that in the future.
Mm-hmm. And if I'm just understanding, if I may, Councillor McGuire's question, so and my response was simply that we would bring forward a capital request, and I would expect that they do so in a similar manner. So if there is fundraising associated with it, which they may well have, they would include that as part of their understanding of sharing that information with you. So,
Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Miller. I mean, and the mayor as well, because I know for a fact that there's significant donors involved with the library redevelopment, which took a number of years. And in fact, they were patient and we were patient as well. And that now it's happened. So I don't think that fundraising has any part of an MOU with them. And as you mentioned, we don't ask the police to fundraise. We're going to have a discussion about Heritage House. And in fact, we're just starting to put some capital money into the Heritage House, and they've done a lot of fundraising over the past few years, and that they've fallen behind infrastructurally, and now I am pleased to see we're taking care of that. But no, I think that I don't think that any requirement for fundraising should be part of the MOU with the library.
Okay, well, I personally I'm going to support the staff recommendation. Have we got a consensus around that?
Yep.
Well, we've got a majority anyway. So.
And just if I may, to confirm that we will add the component around the annual report. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you.
Moving on, 10.3, the Espinal Dispatch Agreement with Chief Cheesebro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of the report tonight is to request approval from council to enter into an additional fire dispatching agreement. As council will recall, on the 15th of September, we were discussing the two contracts that originally council had approved to take on, and we had a third municipality in the wing. that was seeking dispatching services. At that time, they hadn't taken the contract to their council, but since then, we have submitted a draft dispatching contract to Espanola. They reviewed it. They have gone to their council on October the 14th and unanimously passed entering into an agreement for dispatching services with Smith Falls. In consultation, certainly, and reviewing the collective agreement, this falls in line with what was passed in the collective agreement with regards to the contracts, the number of contracts, and the staffing increase. So our options tonight are for council to approve the recommendation to enter into a dispatching agreement with the municipality of Espanola to provide dispatching services. That's recommended option 1. Option 2 is for council not to approve the recommendation and seek no further dispatching contracts. What I can say is the financial impact for this contract on its own at $24,750 combined with the previous 2 contracts that we entered into is a $93,000 contract. Outside of the contracts that we've taken on this proposed contract, we've had 6 additional calls for further dispatching services. When we look at the dispatching services, we look at the contracts, we base that against the matrix that's been created to ensure that the financial recovery from these contracts will cover the cost of staffing, equipment, and certainly for future equipment. And in this particular case, the 3 contracts will in fact cover an additional dispatcher. And that is my recommendation for tonight.
Thanks, Chief. Questions, comments? All right. Looks like we've got thumbs up. All right. 10.4, Heritage Alteration Permit Application for Heritage House with Manager Granke. Welcome, Carl.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm bringing forward an application on behalf of the very capable planning clerk, Marie Elmsley. It is submitted actually by our Community Services Department under Section 33(6) of the Ontario Heritage Act. So it pertains to the Heritage House Museum, which is a designated property. And the museum, as council is aware, needs some repairs and those repairs include restoring the wood siding, soffits, fascia, balconies, and a number of other pieces, many of which are relate to the heritage defining attributes listed on the designation bylaw. So in order to complete those repairs, council, like with any other private property, council would need to authorize the alterations by resolution under the Heritage Act. So in this case, the Community Services Department is issuing an RFQ for the work, and they're looking to define the heritage expectations and the materials and so on before they do so. So there was a pre-consultation held by the Community Services as well as a review by the Municipal Heritage Committee, and I thank Director Clark for attending that MHC meeting and dialoguing with the committee about some of the options and what they were looking for. So that evening, the Heritage Committee did pass a resolution supporting the requested alterations, and they've included a couple of conditions that are conveyed to within the report that's before you and in the recommendation section. So based on that, our recommendation is that that council passes a resolution under Section 33(6) of the Heritage Act, authorizing the listed alterations to the designated property. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks. Any questions, comments? Councilor
Just a comment, I support this, of course. And it's funny because we were at the Fall Fest and Gary Lackey and I were barbecuing, and then Gary was looking at these items, the balcony, and that he said, "That's looking like it might." And I said, "Yeah." So I'm glad to see this come forward, and we're maintaining that important facility. That's it.
Yeah, good. Any questions? Okay. Yeah. So that'll come forward later. You got thumbs up. So since you're standing there, and the next one is for you as well, Maple Ridge Subdivision Draft Approval Extension and Amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm bringing forward a a request submitted by the developer Rob Campbell to extend the draft approval of the Maple Ridge subdivision for an additional 3 years, and functionally that would relate to the final phase, the final 43 single-family home lots on the south end of Rapp Street, which would be serviced by an on-site stormwater management pond. So the original draft approval for this subdivision was given by council in 2020. It related to 120 single-family home lots, and in that case, development of the lots did the first couple of phases were registered, but development did end up slowing down, and the developer sought and obtained 2 one-year extensions. Those were granted by council, and the current 1-year extension expires this upcoming Sunday. So the developer has submitted a request to extend that now by 3 years in order to allow for market conditions, to allow for the development. So the Planning Act allows municipalities, when we're approving subdivisions, to provide lapsing dates, and those lapsing dates they're there for a reason. They allow us to assess planning, phasing, and whether some of the planning rules or the regulatory context that we work in changes. Some municipalities have servicing allocation policies. So at the end of the day, if a subdivision is prepared to lapse, council has the authority under the Planning Act to extend that, but it also gives us the opportunity to reassess and make sure that that the original approval is still valid. So given the length of time and the potential build out to 2028 before final approval, we did dialogue with all of our other agencies and departments who are involved in the approval process, and we wanted to assess whether council's original draft approval, whether that was still it was still appropriate to carry forward exactly or generally as is. So the assessment of planning staff and our review partners was that the planning merits of the application that we considered improved in 2020 are still valid, and we're recommending that we grant that extension. We did get some suggested alterations to the conditions, mostly from RVCA, and that was based on changes to their regulations and also reassessments that they've undertaken on the functionality of a couple of those wetlands in their areas. So there's also a couple of other minor tweaks to the draft approval conditions to modernize some of those submission requirements at the end. These have been reviewed and okayed by the developer. So at this point, our recommendation is that council adopts a resolution authorizing the amendment of the draft approval conditions and the extension of the subdivision for a period of 3 years, as requested by the applicant. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Councilor McKenna?
Just supportive of the recommendation, and you partially answered my question on the conditions of draft approval, where they came from, because this request came from the developer, but then we undertook to review that, and all those changes come up as a result of that review. Are any of these changes from the developer?
So through you, Mr. Chair, the RVCA, the dialogue between the developer and RVCA has occurred over a number of years. So once we received the request from the developer and town staff were made aware of those changes as they worked through that. But once we received the request from the developer, we'd circulated RVCA and others if they had recommended changes to the draft approval conditions. So that particular wording came straight from RVCA based on the work that they've done with the developer on their own over the last couple of years.
Okay, thank you.
Any other? Nope. So thumbs up. So we'll address that a little later tonight. 10.6 with Director Dauber. The 2026 budget guidelines.
Thank you very much, to the chair. So tonight, we just wanted to have a bit of an introduction in what we're looking at for the budget process for 2026, some of the changes and some of the information that can help council to make some decisions once we actually come back with a bit more of a proposal. The first kind of dozen slides are a bit of a repeat with updates from last year. So I'll be going through those quite quickly and just focusing on what the changes are. The reason that I'm coming back with those slides again is not to say that council has forgotten since last year, but more to remind the public as to what the process looks like, and just make sure that the public's informed on the process step by step. I'm just going to be reading off the screen up here. So we're going to be talking, we're going to give a background, we're going to talk about the guiding documents that we use to structure the way forward, what the budget process is, provide some historical information. And then when we get into this next section, this is where it'll be quite a bit updated. That's the considerations and budget pressures, as well as the public consultation and then the schedule. Next slide, please. So municipal budgets, it's our yearly blueprint for raising and allocating funds, how we raise the money, how we spend it. It talks about our expenses, but also gives a guide as to granting authority and council granting authority. So when council gives the approval of that budget, that's granting the staff the authority to go ahead and spend those funds that are identified and approved in order to provide the services to the residents. Next slide. Council approval is required. It's mandatory through the Municipal Act, and it's reflective of the services of the town, focusing on both the operating and the capital budget. And what you will see as we go through the process here is that there's going to be a bit of a change in the capital. Director Clark touched on it, but I'll just expand on it a little bit more. Next slide, please. So there has been a change through the Strong Mayors Act. I'm not going to get into too much detail here because I'm coming back to the report shortly to talk about that more in detail. But there are some sections of the Strong Mayors Act which the mayor can relinquish, and there are some that have to be done regardless. And that we'll be talking about that later on, but it really talks about the timing of the budget and how the budget is presented and announced. And as I said, we'll talk about that in an upcoming report. Next slide. So operating budget, this is supporting daily operations and services. It's a two funding system where we have the tax-based portion and the water and sewer rate portion. The revenue sources are provincial grants, user fees, penalties and interest, invested income, growth-related revenue, and tax levy. And as a reminder to the public, the tax levy is the largest portion of between 60 and 65% of what the town raises, but it's not all of it. There are a number of other revenue sources as listed in this slide. Next slide, please. So the capital budget invests in long-term assets. It supports sustainable service, and it's funded through secondary from the operating budget because there are transfers from water and sewer, as well as the tax levy to go towards those capital structures. But then there's also the government grants and then the ability to have debt as a funding method. Next slide, please. So the largest, as I said before, largest source for the town is the tax levy. It generated to 21.5 million in 2025, and it's calculated, and for the public, it's calculated by taking that assessed property value, which currently it's provided by MPAC, but currently is based on the 2016 rates, and there's no updated information on that. I'm sorry to report, and that is then used to calculate what the levy is required. And then that comes up with the tax rate that's applied against that assessment on the yearly tax bill. And the tax bills, those values, as it says here, is provided by MPAC on the yearly roll. It usually comes in around December. We're able to load it up, so when we hit January 1st, we have that tax roll in our financial system. Next slide. So the guiding documents has changed a little bit from last year. So we've got the strategic plan, setting the priorities of council. We've got the asset management plan, which was updated in July, which guides us into the longer term plans as we come together with our studies and start looking at what our needs are over the next 10 years. Then the asset management plan identifies how we're going to fund that and put some parameters around that. The roads plan is new. The council had asked for a little bit of a longer term when we started talking last year about the ACMP, I think I got the acronyms in the right order, which is the asphalt curb.
Asphalt, concrete, milling and paving.
Asphalt, concrete, milling and paving, thank you very much. Program, we do have, are in possession of a 10-year plan for that. And then the engineering department also went through and looked at a 10-year capital construction plan, which is roads and everything above the surface, but will also include some of the infrastructure underneath as well. Again, new is building condition assessment. They're done, they have been completed. We're just waiting for the some final desktop work to be done, and we should be able to bring that forward in the budget process to talk about what we're looking at both from a capital and operating perspective over the next 10 years. The IT strategy, which again, I thank everybody for participating in that and offering some input. We're wrapping things up, having the final meetings with senior management and the consultants, and we will be coming back with a report forthcoming shortly, as soon as possible. And then we have our departmental plans, which are the water financial plan. The OSIM bridge report, I know it's better to define acronyms, but I honestly can't remember what OSIM stands for, but it is the bridge inspection report that we do on a biannual basis. And then departmental master plans as they become available. Next slide. So this is just a highlight again of the strategic plan, transportation networks, housing, redevelopment of the waterfront downtown, infrastructure renewal, new business attraction, parks and trails and recreation. I'm not going to go into detail. Of course, council is very much aware of it and is publicly available if any of the members of the public want more detail. Next slide, please. So the budget process is we build on departmental efforts, and the only change to this slide is adding in the mayor's and council's guidance, because there is a distinction now with the Strong Mayors Act, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Public input and feedback is actively solicited. Now, it has been in Smiths Falls for a while, but in the Strong Mayors Act, it's actually identified that it must happen. But Smiths Falls has actually been doing it for a number of years, so we're ahead of the curve on that one. A bylaw is presented to council early in 2026 in order to make it law that we can collect those funds from the public, as well as all those various revenue sources. And then once the budgets are set and the assessment rules given from MPAC, we're able to calculate what the levy is going to be and be able to send out those tax bills. Next slide, please. So this is now where we're starting to get into some changes. This is an updated piece of information. It's rolling forward from last year, but we've added what the 2025 rates are. So the inflationary rate dropped down a little bit from last year because the last couple of years the CPI has started to level out a little bit. We're looking at projecting 2.2 in 2025. That's our best information is pointing towards a 2.2 increase, and I believe that's a solid number. So on average, water and sewer have increased 2.5, 3.5, and the taxes at 2.08. We're still not keeping up with inflation. However, we're closer this year than we have, especially on the water and sewer side, because we have seen some higher increases. Of course, 2025, we did see a much higher increase in the taxes, which brought us up from under 2% to just over 2%. So we're trending in a good way. Next slide, please. So this is probably where we're going to invoke a little bit more conversation. This is based on information that we know and also information that we have calculated and take our best efforts to be able to come back and present to council to say, these are our budget pressures as we come into the new year. So decrease in investment revenue, we're looking at a decrease of about $400,000. There's two parts to that. One is the interest rates have come down. And later this week, we're going to be having another interest rate announcement from the Bank of Canada. So we'll find out exactly what that looks like. But we've also seen with the higher capital spend in the last couple of years, we've seen lower bank balances than we had previously to that. So So they both run hand in hand, and we feel that it's prudent to lower that revenue level by about 400,000, which would equate to just under a 1.9% levy increase. Decrease in supplemental billings. The building has slowed down. We looked at the number of outstanding permits to calculate what the construction value is, to multiply it against what the 2025 tax rates are, in order to determine that this potentially is what we'll get in supplemental billings. And the building level for this year has dropped so much that we're looking at about a $450,000 decrease in supplemental revenues. And we will keep an eye on that and keep in contact with MPAC. We had a meeting today with them, and we'll just keep an eye on that to make sure that that doesn't change. There was an increase in Lanark County Shared Services. The effect is negative, and a lot of these, when they're negative, it means it's a pressure. 150,000. That's based on draft budget information from the county. That is not final. That's draft only at this point. Potential increase in debt payments. We're going to have a more fulsome discussion on debt on November the, I think it's the 10th. I'm going to be coming back with a report. It was too much information to come back with tonight, so we decided to pair it up and come back with a focused discussion on the debt. But right now, as we'll come forward on November the 10th, we're looking at about a $560,000 increase in operating to service the debt, most of which is related to the water tower. But again, we'll come back on the 10th with more information on that. Insurance increase, we're looking at about a 15% insurance increase in 2026. That's not official. The process for getting the final rates has begun, and we'll have that information before the end of the budget process. But our best guess at this point is we're looking at a 15% increase, which is just over $100,000 for that line. As I said earlier, we had the asset management plan brought back to council back in July, and they made some recommendations as to increases in how we calculate the contributions towards the capital. And the tax base recommendation was 0.5% of the overall levy proposed in the year. Normally, we would go up by something more like CPI, but this one actually increases a bit more. Normally, we would be looking at about a $45,000 increase. But with their proposal, if we were to move forward with that, and everything I'm talking about is if, a lot of the things we're talking about is if. So if we were to go with the recommendation of the asset management plan, we'd be looking at a larger increase. But the water and the wastewater based is actually just a smaller contribution. So if we were to go with the recommendation, it would be a much smaller increase over what would have normally been budgeted in the year. And I'm going to skip down the line and say growth. We calculated out the growth based on impact numbers from Municipal Connect, and we're looking at somewhere around $300,000 of increased tax base for 2026 to offset some of those other costs. Now, the CPI increase, if we were to take the rest of the budget and just very roughly put a 2.2% increase on that, less all of these other pressures, we'd be looking at about $197,000. So overall, these pressures amount to about $1.7 million. So I want to make sure that the public understands we are not coming forward with a proposal. This is not what our recommendation is to move forward. What we're saying is based on their information, with the pressures that we're looking at, that we're keeping an eye on, if we were to say, yeah, let's do them all, it would look something like an 8% levy increase. Of course, I highly doubt that's what council is looking at for 2026. So again, I say to the public, please keep in mind, this is just a report to talk about the pressures, and this is not a proposal. Next slide, please. So I also wanted to talk a little bit about some of the funding. So the OMPF funding, there's a fair amount of information on there, but what it really comes down to is 2 years in a row, there was an initiation by the province to increase the OMPF funding by $100,000. $50,000 in 25, $50 million in 2025, and $50 million in 2026. The focus of that remains on small, northern, and rural municipalities. So the best estimates at this point, and as per the provincial website to update this, is that with that focus, Smith Falls is probably looking at either no increase or a very slight decrease, but more likely we're going to remain the same or just have a little bit more, but we're not going to see a significant difference because most of that extra funding is going to municipalities that are determined to have more need. And unfortunately, that's the reality of it. Normally, that funding allocation is announced anywhere from the end of October to about mid-November, but this year it's believed that it's going to come in after the full economic statement from the province later in November. Next slide, please. So on the capital side, there's only a couple of things. One, the gas tax is exactly the same as last year. We'll be seeing about a $24,000 increase in 2027, but in 26 it's going to be exactly the same as 25. But the OCIF decreased by $96,000. Next slide, please. That's a 10% decrease, which is under the calculation is the most that it can either decrease or it can increase. So because of the fact that it's such a significant decrease, I want to come back with a little bit more information for council and to the public to explain kind of why this happens. So the OCIF fund is a pie that's distributed to all those qualified municipalities. And a qualified municipality for OCIF is a municipality that's under 100,000 residents. And of the 444 municipalities, that's about 394. The inputs for the calculation are the households, the total weighted assessment per household, and the median household income, not the average, but the median household income, and then the number of households. So what ends up happening with that calculation is they look at our current value assessment and what our replacement costs are for all of our core infrastructure, the roads, the bridges, the pipes, the water plants, that sort of thing. So that's no vehicles, no facilities above the ground, but our core infrastructure and what that replacement value is. And then that's used to against the weighted property assessment number of households, and then looking at that income. Part of that calculation takes the median income across the province and looks at every municipality and how far they are above that and how far they are below that. And when they're below a certain amount, it gives them more points to say they have greater need and more limited capacity to be able to increase their tax levy. So what ends up happening is that municipalities that show a greater need tend to get higher scoring and tend to get a more help from the OCIF funds. So moving forward, if our cost of replacement value for the infrastructure goes up, we do change in how that pie is divided, but it's really relative to how other municipalities change as well. So if there's a great amount of change across the board, or there's more municipalities that show a higher financial need, and some of those stats come from Stats Canada. It's not anything that we input. We input the core infrastructure replacement value on a regular basis and report that. But outside of that, it's information that's grabbed from Stats Canada. They calculate it, and then they give a scoring system that then divides that pie up. So what's happened is they've basically, in essence, said there's other municipalities that have greater financial needs than Smith Falls. So therefore, we're going to reduce how much funding we're going to give for OCIF. When I ran the numbers, so the total amount that we will be getting is $868,854. And I just want to make sure council is aware of this. When I calculated the numbers, it actually came up to just over $770,000, but there's a factor in there where they can't reduce it more than 10%. So they've reduced it 10%. And according to their calculations, that we may be looking at another 10% reduction again in 2027. I'm sorry to bring that news to council, but I wanted to bring some reality to it and what we're going to deal with, so that when we present the budget, that we can look at what those pressures are and then figure out a good plan to move forward with that. Next slide, please. Public consultation, we've talked about that. It's been done on a yearly basis, and we're going to continue to do that public consultation. I believe the survey, it's in the form of a survey. It'll be going out in December, and as per normal, we'll come back to council with the results of that survey in January. Next slide, please. So the budget schedule is fairly in line with last year, with a bit of an addition. The first draft of the capital budget on November 24th. Director Clark spoke earlier about budget enhancement sheets in relation to the library. So all the departments are filling out budget enhancement sheets, which is a fancy way of saying a business case. So normally we would have the capital budget summary that's given, and we would present that to council. But what we're doing is we're filling out these business cases to give council a little bit of information as to how we're going to fund it, why it's necessary, and it just provides council with a little bit more information in order to make good decisions that we'll provide ahead of time, give council time to read those over, and then make that a part of the discussion for their budget meetings. Next slide. And with that, I would take any questions.
Thank you. Any comments, questions? Councilor
Oh,
Brennan.
just a comment. That's a great starting point. And I appreciate the information. I'm sure everyone that's watching appreciates it, but we'll be talking a lot more about the budget in the next couple of months. So that was a great presentation though. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Councilor McKenna.
Thanks very much. Couple things. The OSIP funding, I mean, we did grow last year significantly. Our tax revenue was up. And it's one of the few funding pots that I've seen in the municipal world where they actually looked at the income of the residents, or ability to pay of the residents, and then adjust accordingly. So I wish we could see more formulas. It may not be perfect, but the fact that they looked at the medium income of the medium income, right?
It's the medium, and I said that wrong. It's the median income for all of Ontario, and then how far our average household income is off of that median income.
There is some look at our community's ability to pay in order to be eligible. So it's a step in the right direction, I guess. Just a comment. And the others, on the guiding documents, and I'm sure that slide where you listed about 8 of them, that is a comprehensive list of guiding documents, or maybe it is. So my question is either for you or the CAO is, how do the other guiding documents, what I call the foundational documents, the Transportation Master Plan, Parks and Rec Master Plan, etc., how do they influence budget, or do they? Because there's other key documents. You've named a few, but there's so many more. I just wondered how they play into this, or do they?
So at this point, when it comes to roads, so we're talking about the master transportation plan, right? What's going to be coming forward in 2026 is the estimates and all the work that the engineering department has put into it. As far the master, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, CEO Morris, the master plan, the roads master plan, would be more of a strategic plan that would guide the direction of how the roads department implements, or at what level that we keep the roads, and kind of focuses on growth and what are we looking towards in the future. It's not providing specific numbers, but I believe it provides kind of a housing for what those yearly detailed plans and financial costs might be.
See how Morris.
Yeah, I think Mr. Dabber captured it. I would just add that, so at the master plan level, those larger documents will feed the asset management plan, which then directly guides the capital budget requests. So, so the recreation master plan, for instance, is a very high level document that feeds the asset management plan from a capital replacement and additional infrastructure investment point of view. So you bring up a good point. There are more than what was mentioned in the presentation, but ultimately they all inform the asset management plan. And that's, I would say, the guiding document when we put a capital plan together. And there was some appetite last year to look at multi-year, maybe not budgeting, like approving a multi-year capital budget, but at least multi-year forecasting. So we did that last year. Mr. Dabber introduced a kind of a glimpse into the following year, following 2 years, I think. So we're going to be, as we assemble more master planning documents and have a longer runway into those investments, we'll have better information to guide those multi-year forecasts. But you're right, there are probably 10 or 12 documents that all guide the capital budget.
And if I was a request, I think, because you've really laid out a nice budget schedule, and it's always been deliberate, but this is planned and thoughtful. And so when we get, I'm just wondering if it's possible, when we get our first draft capital budget, is it possible, rather than get it electronically, that we have a binder that I can keep, and then when we add the operating budget, I can add it. So that tool would be really helpful, because it's hard to go back when you're on screen, to go back to look at the capital. It's just with a tool. If it's not practical, I'm fine. If I'm doing one, I won't insist, but a binder might be helpful for me.
Through the chair, that's no problem. I've provided that in the past. Absolutely, it's not a great burden to be able to do that. So we could certainly work that out.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments? Well, I think it's a good one. So
yeah,
it seemed to have approval around the horseshoe.
Thank you.
All right. So let's go to 10.7 with Director McMunn on the MTO Connecting Link application for intake 11.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, as the chair just mentioned, my report is with respect to a funding program that the Ministry of Transportation has put out some time ago called the Connecting Link program. So that would be a program that funds up to 90% dollars on road and bridge projects that would be inside a municipality where, similar to Highway 15, that connects on, that flows through town, being Lombard Street to Beckwith, and makes its way out and heads to Carlton Place. So we're at intake number 11. This was announced back in the summer earlier. The deadline for submission is November 13th. So they upped the funding protocol, I guess, for this particular grant. They raised the bridge allocation to $7 million for one single bridge project, and $5 million for road projects. So this report speaks to two of the series of 4 bridges that we have crossing the canal, being the new lock and the pedestrian overpass structure. The other 2 structures have been previously rehabilitated in 2016 and 2028. That's the Stone Arch Bridge and the Old Lock Bridge. So previously rehabilitated. This funding program would support the new lock and pedestrian overpass bridges. So as Director Dauber mentioned earlier, we do what we call OSIM inspections. Those are the Ontario Structure inspection manual that we follow when we inspect bridge structures in Ontario. So we do that on a biennial basis. So every 2 years we do those inspections through a consultant. In 2021, it was noted that those two particular bridges were, not to alarm anybody, but there's some significant deterioration going on. Not that they're going to fall down tomorrow or anything like that. I'm confident in saying that, albeit if they're addressed sooner than later, they will significantly prolong the life expectancy of the bridge if we spend some money now. And like I said, this funding program does allocate 90% or 9 cents on the dollar towards these programs. So at a $7 million ask, we would be putting in $700,000, and the province would be picking up the tab for the balance of those costs. So as you recall, last year we applied to the Ministry of Transportation through intake number 10, and we were awarded funding to complete the detailed design for these two bridges. The detailed design is wrapping up. We're in a position where we're starting to work on the application contingent on council's direction here this evening. We can finish that process and be in a position where we can apply by November 13th of this calendar year. So with that, if they're happy to take any questions through the chair, but tonight I'm just looking for council's concurrence to make application. We're not committing the municipality to the $700,000 at this point. We're making an application. If we get a favorable response from MTO and we're awarded the full amount, and we do believe that the scope of this project will be in and around the $7 million price tag. So we anticipate the town's portion to be 10% of that, or $700,000. But like I said, there'll be a report come to council once we hear back from MTO whether or not we're successful or not, and that is anticipated. We will hear something by June of 2026, albeit it would be incumbent on council to put a portion of those funds away in the 2026 capital budget once we get to deliberations.
Councilor Boyer?
Thanks, Paul. This is my favorite, I think, grant program the province has, because we've been successful at it, and it gives us 90%. It doesn't say anything about complete streets in the report, and I'm wondering, we've got the bike lanes that end there now. We've got an intersection that's dangerous for pedestrians and cyclists. How will that be incorporated into the design?
So thank you, through the chair. So right now we're looking at full resurfacing of those series of 4 bridges. Obviously, two of those bridges would be rehabilitated. So we're actually looking at the vehicular routing through those series of 4 bridges now that it's up in the air whether or not we're still going to incorporate the turning lane to go into Canal Street, where Parks Canada's Lockhouse is. But yeah, we're working on that transportation component to see whether or not we can incorporate cycling infrastructure or not. So we are cognizant of that, and it's basically a tabletop exercise in CAD to see whether or not everything will fit or not. I should have noted as well that we're looking at upgrading the street lighting package that we have on the bridges to have some continuity with the lighting package that we have in the downtown core up through Beckwith Street all the way out to Elmsley. So that would mean new lighting poles and fixtures to be the black concept that we have through the downtown core. And we're also looking at some geometric configurations of the Jasper, Lombard, Brockville Street intersection as well, just to get, particularly on the Jasper side as you approach the intersection, the lanes are really narrow there, so we're working on kind of some geometric changes there to make it a little bit wider.
Mayor Planka?
Yeah, and also we support the recommendation, and I think as Councilor McGuire indicated, we've been successful numerous times in past years for Connect Lane funding. It is a provincial highway, so I support the recommendation. Let's get moving on it.
For the free-flowing right-hand turn lane from Beckwith onto Lombard, Right. We had a really good improvement, I think, at the Beckwith and Elmsley intersection for safety and pedestrian crossing. Is that going to be removed and turned into a right-hand turn lane?
No, at this point, through the chair, no. Only because the geometry through that intersection, it does lend itself well to have that right turning lane through there. But I can follow up with the consultant to see whether or not they've actually really dove into that to see whether or not that change could be made. But it's my understanding that there wouldn't be really any significant changes. We'd still have that right turning lane.
Okay. Right. Yeah, I think if we could get rid of that, it's really hard to see when you're coming around the corner as a pedestrian. You can't see the cars coming. As a car, it's hard to see the people coming, and then you've got that big slope that's not accessible. So, yeah, I really wouldn't want to see it go back the way it is now.
Councilor McKenna.
Yeah, I'm supportive. Generally, it's a very high level. We're not seeing any of the design, or it's not in the graph right. It's all words about what you're going to do. I had to read it really a few times to get it, but I think I've got it. And I'm interested to see what we could do for pedestrian safety on that curve. It's such a well hidden turn that the police will often park there and look for somebody on their cell phone, because you come around the corner and they're right there. You don't have an opportunity to see. Having said that, there's one other lane that we used to have in the museum was there, the bus pull-in lane. Is that part of the plan that we could improve that, lend it to bicycles, or if it pulls in and it goes back out, it's unused space.
Right, through the chair, if I understand the question correctly, it's wanting to perhaps expand on that, or are we interested in having parking on
What are
this
we
side?
doing with it? It's an opportunity. We got this grant. When I was watching our bridge be put in place, you could see a lot of. I sat there for 3 hours. So, and there's a person path naturally for bicycles and people. They cut across the yard, so that there's room there to accommodate bicycles or, anyways, pedestrians as well. Is that part of the plan?
So through the chair, yes, the cycling infrastructure is part of the plan that we're looking at. Hadn't really considered too much of a change there along that quote unquote bus parking that's adjacent to the war monument. Personally, absent the bridge work that we're doing on replacement of the Confederation Bridge, I've very seldom ever seen anybody park there. I don't know that we have much in the way of buses coming to town that park there. So it could be an opportunity to simply remove the parking there and trying to garner some space back to accommodate cycling infrastructure on the road, if that makes sense. I don't know how much it would lend itself to that, but all that to say, we are cognizant of the cycling infrastructure and that center turning lane, and seeing how things can be manipulated a little bit to incorporate cycling infrastructure. But keep in mind that we're limited by the width of the bridges that we have in themselves. And the priority would be vehicular traffic would be paramount. If we're able to fit in the cycling infrastructure, then we would certainly do that to accommodate the full streets or the complete streets policy that we have.
Don't see any other hands up, so it appears as if you should be going ahead to get that.
Okay, thank
There's
you.
your direction. All right, and last but not least, 10.8 with Director Dauber again. You're a popular guy tonight. It's about the expansion of strong mayor powers to the heads of council.
Thank you. Through the chair, I wanted to come back and talk a little bit more about strong mayor's power. Now, there have been other reports in the past by my staff on this, but in preparation for the budget meeting, really want to kind of come back and focus on what the changes are for the budget process. So really, from a high level, it talks about the mayor being more involved in the budget specifically and with the purpose of supporting provincial priorities, especially how it relates to housing-related objectives, and then directs adherence to required timelines. So there's a chart in there, a flow chart, that kind of gives an overview of exactly the timelines and what happens and what council's recourse are. So first of all, to start off, the mayor presents the budget to council on no later than February 1st. So we're not talking about the preparation of the budget or having meetings to discuss exactly what those figures look like, to have the proposals, but it's really talking more about announcing that this is the final budget. We don't actually have to call it the mayor's budget, so it doesn't actually have to have the title on there, but the mayor has to introduce it, so which is a formality of presentation. It doesn't actually fall outside of the parameters with our current budget policy. And the current budget policy says that council will pass the budget by the end of January of every year. Now, last year was, and 24 was a good example that I think 29th was the final approval, the final discussion. The numbers were solidified and council approved, and then the bylaw came back early in February. Last year was a little bit different. There was certainly a different flavor in the budget overall. Therefore, it required an extra meeting in February, of which now I realize we should have passed a motion to go outside of the policy for that. So my apologies for that, and we'll catch that this year. But it does give a provision to have those discussions, have the meetings, come back on February 1st, and call this the budget, which would then be presented by the mayor to a degree as a formality. Now, if we still needed that meeting in February, there is a trigger point where council can say that they want to amend the budget. And then the mayor has the ability to come back and speak and address those amendments as to whether it's an agreement or in opposition. At this point, I think there's so much camaraderie around the horseshoe. I don't really see that happening, but as a formality, that's our trigger point. To be able to go into February to have those discussions. It's clunky this year. We'll certainly work towards something a little bit smoother, but it does give a trigger point. I'm not going to get into the details of all the flow chart because really it has to do with amendments back and forth and what the procedures are and what the timelines are for all of those amendments. But I believe that in this case, we'd be just looking at that final presentation of the budget no later than February 1st. And our last meeting before that would be, according to the budget schedule, would be January 26th. So at that point, if we feel confident in the number, we'll present it as the mayor's budget and then bring the bylaw back and move on from that. But we do have that trigger point to come back in February for another meeting. There are a couple of other changes. With the budget, a lot of the Strong Mayor's powers really direct towards the timing of the budget and the processes. But I want to point out that those timelines are defined in the governing statutes, but are not applicable to Police Services Board, and I apologize, there's a spelling mistake in there, the Library Board, the Conservation Authority, the Downtown Business Association, and then Lanark County Shared Services as they propose their budget. So the timing of the Strong Mayors does not apply to those boards that are outside of the main budget for the town. There's also a process that allows in-year amendments to the budget. So in-year amendments in the budget can be, we're not going to spend these dollars over here, so we're going to transfer it over to fund this project. And when we're talking about operating the CAOs under his authority, has the ability to do that, or we can come back to council with an amendment to the capital budget. But this is a little bit different. This is saying we've got a radical change. We're going to send out an extra tax bill to the resident, and it gives council that authority to do that. I don't anticipate that's going to happen. I don't believe it's ever happened, and I don't know a municipality that it has happened to. but it does spell that out as the ability for council to do that. I can go into more detail, or I can just take some questions from council. So I think I'll just take some questions.
Questions, comments? Councillor McKenna.
No, it was very well laid out. Thank you. I just, and I've said this before, Atlantic County Shared Services, the public health unit, I think it should not be lumped in there. It's a distinct, they have the legislative authority to pass levies. It's got nothing to do with Atlantic County Shared Services. It's totally independent. They've just passed their 2026 budget.
Okay.
And the levy's been set for Smiths Falls, including the mitigation. So it's historic. We've done it this way.
Okay.
I think it's on par with Rita Valley Conservation. It should be separate.
Okay. Through the chair, thank you for that update. I appreciate that.
Good. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any committee, board, and or external organization updates? No. We have no information listing or correspondence items, no notice of motions. I will take a motion for adjournment, moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Quinn, that the committee adjourn its proceedings at 7:33 p.m. and stand so adjourned until the next duly called meeting or committee meeting. All in favor? Carried.
1 minute recess.
Ron.
Where are you going?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the special meeting of Smiths Falls Town Council for Monday, October 27th, 2025. On October 27th, 2025, we acknowledge the sacred land in which Smiths Falls is located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in indigenous history. This land is the ancestral, unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We're grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We're also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. We're mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship in mindful generations to come. I will call the meeting to order at 7:35 a.m. That's for approval of the agenda with Councillor Quinn, please.
Thank you. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Brennan, that the October 27th, 2025 special council meeting agenda be approved as circulated.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Quinn and seconded by Councillor Brennan. The October 27th, 2025 special council meeting agenda be approved as circulated. All in favor? Carried. I'll ask for disclosure of pecuniary interest and or conflict of interest or general nature thereof. I see none. We have no approval of minutes. I assume no reports, updates. No, I have no announcements, no presentations or proclamations. Consent agenda. One piece of business with Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Robinson, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls amends its conditions of draft approval for the Maple Ridge subdivision, file number SD 1901, pursuant to section 5145 of the Planning Act, as set out in Appendix B, the Council Report 2025-111, and that the Council hereby extends the draft approval under section 5133 of the Planning Act for a period of 3 years, expiring November 2nd, 2028.
Thank you. Further discussion?
This formalizes our discussion at our community whole meeting and gives 3 more years for that development to keep going.
Any further discussion? It's moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Robinson. The Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smiths Falls amends its conditions of draft approval for the Maple Ridge subdivision, file number SD-19-01, pursuant to section 51 in brackets 45 of the Planning Act, as set out in agenda Appendix B to the Council Report 2025-111. The Council hereby extends a draft approval under section 51 in brackets 33 of the Planning Act for a period of 3 years expiring on November 2nd, 2028. All in favor? Carried. We have no bylaws, no inquiries or announcements. No confirmatory bylaw, and adjournment with Councillor Robinson, please.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Brennan, that this council adjourn its proceedings at 7:38 p.m. and stand so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Brennan. This council adjourns proceedings at 7:38 p.m. Stand so adjourned to the next duly called meeting of council. All in favor? We are adjourned. Go Jays, go.